Hello, everyone. So here we are on the theme of priesthood and starting the final unit here in the book of Revelation, chapters 4 through 5. Small text when you actually get a chance to read it, but I'm titling this A Divorce Decree to Ratify a New Covenant and Marriage. So we've talked about eschatology for the last 3 years in various different portions of the lessons we've talked about. I'm not ashamed. And I fully admit that I'm not a premillennial dispensationalist. I look at these particular passages that often deal with what many people assume to be future end time events as being preteristic, meaning they've already taken place in the past, with the exception of, say, portions of the last two chapters of Revelation. But as this is in the beginning of the book of Revelation, for me, this deals uniquely with historical events that lay around the time when Israel was laid siege to by Rome. So please don't turn this off and say, well, I don't think that way, so there's nothing here for me to get. I want you to walk with me in this, and not because I'm trying to convince you to think my way, but just consider the evidence, and maybe there might be something here to explore a little bit deeper. And of course, when we get to the Wednesday night session, we're going to unpack this more. I'll have the chance, perhaps, to go into even greater depth and detail with this. So that being said, far right side of the screen, a vision of a scroll. So moving from top to bottom with the first orange block at the top and the orange block at the very bottom here, and then moving toward the center of the screen, which is what I hope those center arrows there kind of make sense of, is looking at the inspiration from which John is drawing upon with all of these Old Testament allusions, because he makes many of them, far more allusions than he does quotations. So starting with Ezekiel chapter 2, look at this. So I looked and saw a hand reaching out to me. There was a written scroll in it, and when he unrolled it before me, it was written on the front and the back words of lamentation, mourning, and woe. Now to the bottom of the screen, then I saw in the right hand of the one reaching out to me, seated on the throne with a scroll with writing on both sides, sealed with seven seals. Writing on both sides. This seems to be very similar to the scroll that Ezekiel possesses. And what this ultimately is a protracted divorce decree that God is giving to Israel. And we understand this from the collective words of many prophets, other than just Ezekiel, as to what God is doing to this moment of despairing judgment and doom that he's bringing upon his people at the hands of the Babylonians. And now, in the time of first century New Testament period, again, the people of the old covenant by virtue of their rejection of Jesus as Messiah, and now at the hands of the Romans. So we move to the next black block, same in both columns. Opened in the presence of heavenly creatures. So we go back to Ezekiel 3. Spirit lifts him up, and there's the sound of living creatures' wings brushing against each other. Again, this is all right at the time right at the time when Ezekiel is opening this. Then this is what John has to say. Then I saw one like a slaughtered lamb standing in the midst of the throne and the four living creatures. So again, another point of connection here that makes the illusion too strong to miss. And the consequences of the scroll here, as Ezekiel opens it, is the Lord pronounces that Israel is seen to be hard-hearted, the entirety of the whole house that does not want to listen to the Lord because they are in full, complete rebellion against God. And that's the reason for the ensuing judgment, which would mean, as we clearly understand, whatever our outlook on the book of Revelation is, judgment is in tow with the opening of that seven sealed scroll. We go back to Revelation 6, though, we understand that when John says he saw the lamb open one of the seven seals, and he heard one of the four living creatures say with a voice like thunder, "Come." I looked, and there was a white horse, and its rider had a bow, and a crown was given to him. He went forth to conquer in order to conquer. So clearly, war is the mechanism of judgment here. So moving forward now to the top side of the right side of the screen, Yahweh divorced old Israel. So three areas to work through here relatively quickly. So a people wed to Yahweh at Sinai and declared a kingdom. This is exactly what the Old Testament narrative for Israel is all about. Let me move my camera view out of the way here, because the use of the wedding vows essentially exchanged at Sinai. This is the blood of the covenant that the Lord has made with you concerning all these words that you promised you would agree to obey, and promised in agreeing to obey. few chapters before that, in Exodus 19, God said, if you will carefully listen to me, then you will be my kingdom of priests and my holy nation to intercede to the whole world. But they rebelled through adultery against Yahweh. This is Jeremiah's pronouncement of judgment against them. I observed that it was because of unfaithful Israel that they had committed adultery that I sent her away and gave her a certificate of divorcement. This pattern is repeating itself. Essentially, what has happened when they were restored to the land is that although the Lord orchestrated that, it was to set the stage for the coming of Messiah. It's not to say God didn't have his hand in many of the things that were going on, and that there weren't faithful people who were expectantly waiting for Messiah, and that were part of that group of people who were redeemed under the provisions of the old covenant by virtue of them waiting expectantly for Jesus to come and then ultimately pay for all of their sin. But many who have also come to reject Jesus. So by virtue of that, that extended period from Ezra, Nehemiah, all the way up to the appearance of Jesus, what we have here is a continuation of this idea of this divorcement until the renewal comes, because the renewal doesn't come until Messiah appears, not when they go back to the land, right? And then in Isaiah 50, where is your mother's divorce certificate that I used to send her away? Look, you were sold for your iniquities, and your mother was sent away because of your transgressions. So it's clear Yahweh has intended to divorce Israel. And this is a truth that transcends the physical restoration of Israel. Because in Matthew 8, this is what Jesus says. I tell you, the many will come from the east and west and share in the banquet with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven, but the sons of the kingdom will be thrown into outer darkness. So this rejection continues because of their stubborn obstinance against God's plan. And in Matthew 22, he says again, then he told his servants, the banquet is ready. Of course, this is coming from a parable, but those who were invited were not worthy to enter in. So, of course, those first round of invitees were those who were the sons of the kingdom that were supposed to come in, who were expected to, but because of their willful rejection of the king's son, this is what happens. They find themselves shut out of this, which again is a clear indictment of judgment against them. So this concept of divorcing old Israel continues. And then at the bottom of the screen, Yahweh takes a new bride, a renewed Israel, a covenant promised with a renewed bride. We go to Jeremiah also, because in Jeremiah 31, we have the text that speaks of the fact God is going to make a new covenant with the house of Israel and Judah. So a remnant will come out, and this faithful remnant will attach themselves to Messiah and become his people, representing the renewed Israel. And again in Hosea 2, on that day I will make a covenant for them, and I will take you to be my wife forever. You will be my wife in righteousness. More to say about this when we get to our 30-minute session, unpack this so we can move on and finish this lesson up. From whence to build the promised kingdom, we go to Isaiah 66. All humanity will come to worship me. And as they leave the New Jerusalem, contextually, this is what we're talking about here. You have to go back to 65 to recognize that. They will see the dead bodies of those who have rebelled against me. This is with respect to all humanity, but ethnic Israel, who choose to not follow the servant, the Messiah figure of the book of Isaiah, and by virtue of that, in rebelling against God, by rebelling against the servant, have found themselves shut out of the kingdom, which, of course, this is on par with what we just read, Jesus saying to those in two different places in Matthew. And he says in Matthew 21:43, therefore I tell you, the kingdom of God will be taken from you and given to a people producing its fruit. This is often thought to mean clearly to the Gentiles and only to the Gentiles, but that's not true. This is seemingly suggesting both Jews and Gentiles, any and everyone, regardless of their ethnicity, who follows Jesus as Messiah. And lastly, and this comes complete with a new Passover aimed at ransoming this Israel out. So in Revelation 5, verse 9, because you are worthy to take the scroll, because you were slaughtered and you purchased a people for God, which carries us all the way back to this story here when God ransomed them by virtue of the Passover, by your blood from every tribe, language, and nation. And then again in the very next verse, and you made them a kingdom of priests to our God, and they will reign on the earth, echoing back here to Exodus 19, verse 6, continuing the exact same mission. But now it's coming out of the remnant of ethnic Israel following Jesus as Messiah, and the Gentile nations who are following Jesus as Messiah as the true Israel, while he is bringing destruction upon the old Israel, destroying the old covenant, and with it, the marriage he had to the former Israel, to ratify a new covenant and renew these marriage vows with a renewed Israel that's taken on a broader scope. So more to follow on that once we actually get to that Wednesday night session.